Well, thank you. Carrie set up the pace nicely. This workshop actually came about from doing it at the PDC, which I think is like an hour and 20 minutes. So we're going to try to do this in 15 minutes. A little bit of context. I'm Jeff Landick. As we mentioned before, I'm the assistant director at CLS, but I also oversee the writing ESL and foreign language tutorials. So that's my writing background. A little bit of context about the approach to this goes all the way back to the late 80s at Santa Barbara City College, where in my first quarter was a spring quarter. I took an English class, did pretty well, got a letter in the mail at the beginning of summer inviting me to tutor writing at their writing center. So for about 5 minutes, I was really excited, right? Compliment, gonna be a writing tutor. Hadn't thought about that before, but then it dawned on me I have no idea at all how to teach writing. Grammar wasn't my thing, didn't know a lot of grammar, so I go, okay, what am I gonna do? So I spent the entire summer with the grammar handbook, kind of memorizing terms, rules of usage, so I was ready to go. Got in there, my very first student, she came in very tentative, a little bit insecure about her writing. I say, no problem, you're in excellent hands. Couple paragraphs in, I go, I found it. I know exactly what the problem is. She goes, you do? And I go, I do. What you have here is a verbal phrase functioning as an adjective that's created in a positive, which, as it turns out, is non-restrictive. Therefore, you need not one, and I gave her a little wink, but two commas to set the aforementioned appositive off from the renamed noun. High-fived myself, took a victory lap around the cubicle, sat back down, and she looked even more confused and insecure about her own writing as possible. So I quickly realized knowing the terms of usage really don't matter that much. It's creating a context of meaning, and that's what you see here. I tried to, when we're looking at these rules, create a context meaning of the workplace. So you're going to see examples from writing, things we might do around the work place here. Carrie mentioned the worst mistakes. They're not necessarily the worst mistakes, and I'll go through and show you some you don't even have to worry about. This is kind of coming from the place of grumbling guardians of grammar. Some you can get rid of and not have to worry about. The bottom 20 is actually just the most frequent writing errors that come up, and this comes from a 2004 study. Pretty close to 100% of all writing. There's a couple of exceptions that come from the same 20. So when I learned about this information, teaching writing, that doesn't seem like that much to try to get a handle on, right? If you can get a pretty good idea about what those are, look for them in your own writing, you can go a long way to eliminate those. So here they are. This is in the order, the frequency with which they occur. A lot of the terms that they use, again, are those kind of non-restrictive, restrictive, the terminology that might not mean stuff or kind of scare you off, but what we're going to do is take a look at that. You'll see quite a few of them, I think 6 total on the list or so, have to do with commas. In the first 8, half of them have to do with commas, so we're going to start there. My dad, who teaches physics, doesn't know why I'm so hung up on commas. He thinks they're not that important, they don't mean that much in writing, but I remind him that they're quite important. Right, just comma to set off the direct address here. So let's take a look at the comma, seeming a little simple guy here. Again, rather than getting into definitions that don't mean much, it really is effective. So again, when I look at rules, I'm looking at them not just that you're writing correctly, but it helps you write effectively, right? A well-placed comma has the reader pause where you want the reader to pause, can set things off to place emphasis on ideas. So they're quite useful for communicating your ideas. Number 1 is a missing comma after an introductory phrase. This is not that big of a deal if you're trying to focus in on the ones you want to eliminate from your writing. The first one, obviously, just sets off what your subject is. So the function of a comma in an introductory phrase, the first one, prepositional or the adverbial one here, the second one, is just identifying who or what you're speaking about, right? The comma lets us know that you're talking about the students gathering. Comma lets us know that we're focusing on the TA is right, the action, the focus of the sentence. But again, be careful because it also helps save our wildlife here locally. So again, not that big of a deal, but if it looks awkward, it's better to be in that habit. Again, at worst, you're just kind of signaling to your reader what you want her to focus on. Missing comma in a series, this is one of those ones that aren't that big of a deal. You need them, it's a rule. I try to create situations where it would be a little awkward if you didn't have them. See if I can do this without messing up the Prezi here. I had a colleague sitting directly next to me that said, he's done away with the Oxford comma, I got to get with the times, it's over. But then I got an email from him. Is it here? Yeah. Scroll down a little bit. Oops. Maybe the other one's a little better. I got an email. Am I scrolling down this way? Oh, this there. Oh, there we go. He sent me this link with the subject line, "Okay, you win." So now he's put that back in there. Oops, sorry. This is a demonstration also that I'm a words guy and not a tech or numbers guy. I sit as far away from the math science drop-in at CLS as I possibly can. Again, the Oxford comma, that last comma, probably not that big of a deal, but if you're looking closely at your sentence, if you're separating something out, if you're looking like naming departments, for example, sometimes not having the comma suggests that there's a relationship between the two. But if you're talking about things individually, that's your best bet to keep it. I just do it all the time just to be in that habit. Also, in the string of adjectives, if it's all modifying the same noun, tall, strong, handsome, but grammar challenged man, you do. Second one, you don't. And it looks like you might, but what you're really doing with bright there is modifying the white, right? It's not necessarily all about the sales. So again, be thinking about that. If they can all independently describe the one subject there, the thing that you're looking at, then you would need one between each. Yeah, again, not that big of a deal on all of these. Here we're getting into some that actually affect your grammar. You need the comma between these. I get that question a lot. When do you need the comma before the conjunction, right? If what comes after the conjunction and so, but stands on its own as a complete sentence, you need the comma before. Yeah? Again, I try to pick examples where that does, it helps communicate the idea, set things off for clarity, right? I plan to see Shirley and Fred, right? It's a little bit confusing, so you're kind of setting off, again, the signaling that there is another idea that you're presenting there as well. Those are quite important. If you had a comma before a conjunction and what followed is not a complete sentence, that's actually a comma splice. People think of comma splices, a comma instead of a period, but again, if you have an unnecessary one, most of the time you might be sitting there thinking, well, it's not going to get in the way of communication, but again, as Carrie mentioned, we're on a university campus writing to other scholars, we're representing an institution of learning, so if people are looking for that or see that, sometimes that's pretty important. So again, I always, I might, if it's a formal piece of writing, I might pay close attention to that, but if it's a shorter sentence, I think it might, stop the flow there a little bit so you can make that judgment. These are pretty important. I mentioned again in the opening about the non-restrictives. Unnecessary commas with the restrictive clause. Restrictive means it's just you need it to communicate your idea. Is it important that your shoes are waterproof if the water's up to your ankle in the boat? Sure. So you don't want to separate that out with a comma. Most people would probably object to a Starbucks being put out on the lagoon bluffs, but here my emphasis is placed on the people that are actually using the labyrinth, so that's essential to the meaning there. Here, if it doesn't matter to the meaning of the sentence, you kind of set that off. People also ask, what's the difference of that and which? Usually you see the that's with the restrictive, because it's placing a little bit more emphasis on that. Which usually sets off non-restrictives. The information isn't as essential to the meaning of the sentence. Does it matter that the textbooks were heavy? Are they heavy? Sure, but it doesn't really matter to the fact that they need to get them for the course. Was she proud of herself that she didn't spill her IPA while she was doing the downward-facing dog? That's pretty nice, but the fact that it was her first PDC workshop, that's why it was special, and that's why it was significant. Yeah. These were attempts at humor for the PDC, because I go, how am I going to get people to come for an hour and 20-minute discussion at PDC when there's beer making and barbecuing and it's grammar? So feel free to laugh if you find them funny. Our first little exercise up, it's on your second page of your handout. Keeping with Carrie's breakneck pace, I'll give you a minute to see if you can spot some errors in there. Anybody see anything going on in that first sentence? Yeah. Everybody hear that? Oops. I used Michael's name there is because people are very, very reluctant to use me, even though it's correct, right? Because, especially in formal writing, they try to elevate it up because it sounds a little bit too casual, but that's the correct way to do it. You want to use the easy trick to ask yourself if it's I or me? Yeah, sure, but if you don't maybe know that, just put your hand over and get rid of what. Yeah, so this needs to be signed by I, and this needs to be signed by me. Join Michael and I for dinner, join me for dinner. Right, join I for dinner, join me for dinner. Those are an easy, is it off? No. Oh, awesome. Yeah, so just get rid of whatever the other object is there, and that's going to let you know exactly what to use. Any questions on that? Maybe I'll just hold it. What about that second sentence? Yeah, it. Anything else there? The second one's a little trickier. Yeah. So the its error you see quite often. That's out of the bottom 20. I'd say that's something to iron out if you have it. It's distracting, at best. It's a pretty glaring error at worst if you have that there. Again, it goes against the idea there that that's the contraction form, so it's a little tricky to remember, but that's something I would pay some close attention to. Different from, yeah.
One one thing I've found about the its is even if you know, it's just an incredibly easy typo to make.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It just happens. And the other thing that I've been dealing with more and more is autocorrect. You don't notice that you're being autocorrect, and you're like, then you go back and, oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah, knowing the rules, especially if you're in a zone, you're typing things through. That's quite a bit. I constantly, if it's an important email, I'm still printing it out and picking up a pen, because do you ever go back and read your email after you sent it and you read it 8 times before and you thought it was perfect, and then you catch something like that? And especially if you have writing tutorials coordinator at the bottom of your email. I'm an easy target. So people, I think, I'm up here bragging about how I know the bottom 20, and I think people are out there looking at my emails closely to see if I do something. I chose from. You could get away with it in your writing, but that's always the rule. You can make exceptions if it sounds a little bit awkward, if it's different than the plans were 6 weeks ago, but that's formally it. Working with a lot of international students, you tell them to memorize the use of which ones to use where, but it's often confusing, on the bus, but in the car, right? On purpose, by accident. But if you think about it, it really makes a difference with that context of meaning. If it's on purpose, you're showing stressing intentionality. If it's by accident, you want to remove yourself from blame. So there are some there as well. From is good because, again, it's emphasizing the difference, right? That it's not similar. What about that next sentence? I'll quickly just kind of jump to these. It's hard to see there. This is a tricky one that I always have to remember. When you see nor, right, automatically you think the rule is, well, there's nobody, so how could it be plural? But whatever you have closest to your verb there is going to determine if that is has or have. If you switch that around, the members nor the committee chair has to sign. That's a little tricky. Most of the time you would write it to avoid that situation, but that's the rule there. Again, the second one to show you that the closest verb, the closest noun there is singular, so the next one is. To them, right, always the singular. I'm losing this battle, right with email with the hyphen. I've given up that one already. But you'll see more and more often that you can use them if you're referring back just to a general. The student needs to bring a book with them, right, if you're talking about kind of gender neutral pronoun there. So you see that happening more and more. Same with none was always singular, but if you're placing emphasis on none of the 20 members were there, you can use plural verb form for a number that isn't plural if that's your emphasis. Vague pronoun reference, right? Even if you have to repeat yourself here, you use Michael instead of vice chancellor, but always be clear that the antecedent is just what that pronoun is taking the place of. It's clear for your reader. The who, whom. It's always a tricky one there. Easy kind of old gender bias test for this is he asked he or he asked him. So I don't know whom to ask to get that information. Yeah? Here we go with a breakneck pace. Again, I hope nobody's getting dizzy with the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint's kind of impressive, but if you're going quickly, it's...
I'm going to have an epileptic seizure.
Okay. You'll recognize the colors here. I won't say where I pulled this from, but if Carrie was talking about mistakes out there publicly, 2 errors there, right? Online and sign up. Both incorrect. That is... It's tough to read here. Just one being used as a noun, one being used as a verb. Easy way to tell if there's a to in front of it, it's usually used as a verb, right? You need to sign up on the sign up sheet. All right, again, you see that sign up, pick up quite a bit on campus, so that's something to look at. Online, I'm losing the battle as well. Most people are using it as one always. I'll quickly get through this. But the online enrollment system, if you're using it as an adjective, that would be singular. To enroll, they had to go online as an adverb there. So see that a bit. Again, I mentioned email. I still use the hyphen, but I'm quickly losing that battle, if not already lost that as well. Oh, here we go. We have a do and don't list. Buy a new school uniform, attend the bottom 20. Definitely needs to attend the bottom 20 because that is an apostrophe error there when you see the do's and don'ts list. Apostrophes are only for contractions and possessions. The only exceptions is when you're using individual letters as words. I have 5s and 1s. Remind your P's and Q's. Learn your ABCs. Never on acronyms, ATMs. On decades, you'll see that quite a bit. A lot of people put 1980s apostrophe S. No, that's just talking about all the years within there. Joint possession, if there's two subjects, you only put it on the outside there. A lot of people ask about the on the S at the end. We get that a lot with CLAS, right, if you need the apostrophe S. Only if it sounds awkward and you didn't. Sophocles' plays are among my favorite, right? You would probably just have the S apostrophe because it's going to create something that's a little awkward there. Oops. Really quickly, they're very collegiate, looking very academic. They even highlight to emphasize that, but of course, the apostrophe is in the wrong place, so kind of undermines their goal there. Really quickly, this is the second one. You can take a look at it later. The first one, there's quite a number of run-ons and comma splices. Run-ons, if a sentence goes on before, you'll see from the handout some rules to change that. Comma splice, again, is a comma that separates two complete sentence independent clauses. Seeing her pursue this next step, my heart ached. That is a misplaced modifier. I'm just going to jump ahead. Sorry, I hope you're not getting dizzy. The professor wrote a paper on her civil uprisings in her office, unless the uprisings were in her office, right? In her office, she was going to have to do that. The dangling modifier, a book on civil unrest caught my eye entering the professor's office. That's implying that that's you, but it's really saying the I. It was entering the room. So seeing her pursue this next step, my heart ached, is the dangling modifier. I saw her pursue this next step. So again, I apologize for going so quickly. The rules are in the back, my emails on every page. Feel free to get some clarification, or if it's a passage or a question about a particular grammar issue, I'd love to see it. If I don't know it, I'd be happy to look it up because I'm trying to add these as well. So thank you very much. Thank you.